Well, it's the end of the season podcast. Look, I've got the suit. I feel like I'm a presenter like Ant and Dec or something. And it's all about the Mesuts tonight. We'll be handing those out and we'll be telling you about the categories and who we think picked them up. First off, let's introduce the podcateers. We got Nick, long time. Too long, Nick.
It's great to be back. Thanks for having me. It's been a little bit chaotic with the birth of our son. So things have cranked up 2-to-2 ratio going on at home. So kind of the chaos kind of went with the chaos.
Grey areas under your eyes now, Nick. Grey areas.
Yeah, I'm not sure what that is.
As well. They're called lines. What's the name of the little fella?
His name's Luke, L-U-U-K. So my family's Dutch, so after Luke de Jong. So
excellent.
Good stuff. How are you, Jay? Welcome back.
Good. Very good. Yeah, very good. Thanks.
Is that the Dennis Bergkamp extractor fan at the back? We've removed all the Arsenal paraphernalia, so we've got to have something in there, haven't we? Everyone okay, Jay?
Yeah, all good, thanks. All good.
How are you, Paul?
Okay, thanks, Tom. I'm glad you said your introduction. You were comparing yourself as a presenter to Ant and Dec rather than Philip Schofield.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll tell you what, I saw Ant and Dec and they're about that big. I saw them in the Borough Market in South London and they are really tiny little fellas. They look like 12-year-old boys, but we'll avoid the connection with Philip Schofield, obviously. How are you, Lauren, moving swiftly on?
I'm good, thank you. I'm good. Yeah, we have a bit of a fashion disaster here. Me and Nick are matching, but it's okay.
Hey, it's very, very good. You're not going to announce some sort of news or anything, are you, Lauren? You're getting married, or you're having a baby, or you're going to the planet Mars or something?
Nah, my life's not that exciting, I'm afraid.
Right then, podcast family, we have got the last one, and it's crammed, it's packed. While we've been away, there's been a Manchester FA Cup final, which we don't really care about. Always a great occasion in the football calendar, but probably the only talking point was the Grealish handball. Apparently, there will be changes to the handball rule to avoid all this shit regarding natural and unnatural. What's all that about? We don't know. On a lighter note, it's Victoria Palova's birthday. I'm expecting her to emerge as a massive Arsenal star next year. She's pretty good this year, to be honest. Kieran Tierney's birthday, Nicolas Pepe's birthday, and 4 years ago, former Arsenal player and invincible Jose Antonio Reyes unfortunately died in a car accident. Very, very sad. Guys, Zlatan Ibrahimovic has announced his retirement from football aged 41. I mean, that's a good innings, isn't it? That is a good innings. 511 goals in 866 club games and 62 in 122 for his country. Nick, what do you make of Zlatan? Tell us a few words about the Zlat.
Definitely enigmatic. And, man, I just saw more pictures circulating today of him in the Arsenal kit and us not getting that done. I mean, adding to the huge running list of those that we didn't quite get over the line. But yeah, I can't say I was always a big fan, always respected him. He came over here to the States and did quite well. So got to kind of see that firsthand.
He's done quite well everywhere, hasn't he?
Everywhere. I mean, yes. Thankfully he didn't go to Tottenham and push them over the line. Not
There's
sure
always one that you can't do, isn't there? There's always that one. Jay, Zlatan, a bit arrogant and all the rest of it, but I like a bit of arrogance. All the best sportsmen in the world, or women, have a little bit of arrogance, don't they, about them?
Yeah. I think there was some, at one point in his career, he had won the league title, something like 7 years on the trot at different, in different countries. And yeah, savage player. Would have loved him at the club, but it'd have been interesting to see how Wenger would have sort of dealt with him back in those days. But great player. He's a character. And the only I suppose negative is that he ended up doing well at United, didn't he? Scored a few goals for them, and great player.
We'll brush over that. Paul, he actually had, you may have a story for us, Paul, about Zlatan, but he actually had a trial with Arsenal, and he turned up there ready to put on the kit and everything, and they said, oh, we're going to do a trial this morning, and he said, Zlatan doesn't do trials. And that was virtually the end of it. Any memories, any fond memories, any little nuggets for us, Paul?
Well, I mean, in terms of football skill, the one standout memory for me was when Sweden played England about 5-6 years ago, and he did that overhead kick for the half,
Oh,
what
yes,
seemed like the halfway line, straight into the back of the net. So I think, as Jay and Nick have both indicated, he was a tremendously talented individual footballer. Yeah, I mean, he had a really good season at United as well, but. He was, to me, he's always the type of player you could never build a team around because he never stayed at any club for that long. So he was never going to be part of a long-term project, and he moved from one club to the next. But yeah, undoubtedly, hugely skilled forward. I mean, you kind of wonder, if he plays at Arsenal, what a difference he would have made to Wenger's side when it started to decline a little bit. And B, you kind of wonder, if he'd been born English, not Swedish, what a difference he would have made to England's forward line at a time when we desperately needed a player like that in front as well. But yeah, big character. Some of the fans can identify with, something that gives the clubs a lift. And I just think it's quite interesting. The one team where he didn't really have success was at Barcelona, with Guardiola, who didn't really see as part of the overall team pattern. So maybe another the case there, as an individual player, fantastic. As to bring a short-term lift to a club, fantastic. But hey, the guy's 41, 42. You know, as Jay just said, he won 7 consecutive league titles. I think, from his point of view, his biggest frustration is probably that he played for Sweden at a time when Sweden weren't a power in world football. I mean, if he played for the Sweden team in '94, they came third in the World Cup, he'd have been an absolute asset to that team. But unfortunately, he played for Sweden when they weren't at the peak of their powers.
Absolutely. Lauren, what did you make of Mr. Zeit? I mean, you know, he was a physical chap, wasn't he? If he couldn't get it fairly, he didn't mind mixing it up, did he?
No, absolutely not. I mean, he was entertaining on and off the pitch. I think, you know, you never really knew what he was going to come out with. I mean, is there ever going to be a player who gets to 41 in one of the top 5 leagues in Europe? I don't think so. It's going to be a very, very long time. You know, Ronaldo couldn't do it. I don't think Messi will do it either. It's crazy. His level of fitness as well. I mean, he had an ACL injury and he was back playing within 6 months. Who does that? You know, definitely an individual player, not someone you really want, you know, on a team, but entertaining all the same. And he's someone that I think a lot of people have very good memories of. So yeah, it's kind of sad to see him go, but I mean, you know, what more can he do at that age?
Sure, there was a character in Ted Lasso that was based on him for sure, because he had all the looks and everything, and I thought, that is him, that's the Zlat. Lauren, we'll stay for you. History being made. Brentford have appointed former Leicester City women's manager Lydia Bedford as head coach of their under-18 side. It's thought that Bedford, 35, will become the first woman to hold a coaching position in the Premier League. I mean, that's massive news, isn't it?
Huge, absolutely huge. I mean, especially when you look at the women's game, there's not that many women in management. So for someone who's come from, I mean, she was part of Ida Val's training team there last season. For someone to come from the women's game to jump straight into, I mean, it's under 18s, but it's still a very big deal to get into the Premier League and to be coaching at that level. And I think, you know, it's something that I spoke about before with Darren as well. For younger players, I think it's quite important to have a female aspect in the coaching element, because, you know, throughout school there's a lot of women teachers, obviously there's men as well, but it just kind of seems like a nice way to bring it in, to bring another aspect to their game, to teach them that bit of respect as well at a younger age. And look, for the game as in general, it's great, and obviously for her, I'm delighted that she's got something like that as well, so it's great to see.
History in the making. We've had the Women's Champions League final as well, Lauren. Barcelona versus Wolfsburg. Did you go?
I didn't go. It was on in Ida Val or somewhere in the Netherlands.
Paper out the way.
But I did watch it, and it was a very uncomfortable first half. Barcelona looked completely off the game, but what a second half it was. They came back and they won it in style, so they got their second Champions League the past 3 years, and it was a nice celebration around the city, so it was really great to see. They deserved it. They've been untouchable all season. I mean, I know I talk an awful lot about the Barcelona women team on this podcast, but I cannot stress enough, they are at the top of their game, and it's such a pleasure to watch them.
Wolfsburg didn't actually read the script, did they? Because they went 2-0 up. Barcelona just turned up with a silver polish, but as you say, it was stylish. It was a real big fight back, and brilliant to see. We'll look at the Arsenal WSL team in a while, but let's reflect on the Premier League top and bottom. It was a gritty old thing, wasn't it? Near misses, might have beens, and teams that had too much to do. Not mentioning you, Paul, obviously, and Everton. Fingertip job, wasn't it? So Palace, let's start with Palace. Nick, sack Vieira and brought back Roy Hodgson, who, despite us feeling that we wanted him to fail, he got them out of trouble with some pretty convincing scorelines. Right decision, but wrong decision for me, because where are they going to go now?
Yeah, I was surprised that he did as well as he did. Knowing the club, that probably helped coming in, hitting the ground. But you're right, a club like that has so many young, talented players, and Eze, Elise, Mark Gahey, Tyreek Mitchell. I think I would have liked to see them. I don't, maybe they just decided they didn't. They just wanted to make sure they were safe, and then see how long they can ride Roy, and then maybe appoint somebody more long term. So yeah, I felt bad for Big Patty, and felt like I don't know. Maybe it was the right time, but yeah, I felt a little hard done for his sake. So, because I just think Palace has a talented team for sure.
I think he would have got them out of it as well. That's the big kicker, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. And maybe they were pushing for more than that, as I think they should be. I think with who they have and who they kind of attract a level of talent that could hopefully, for their sake, you push them a little closer to maybe top half, and going from there. That's a big step for a club like that to make. And I think this move kind of solidified them around that mid to lower mid table spot.
Well, that's the thing. That's really their sort of ability to aim there, isn't it, at the moment, without go too deep into detail. Jay, what happens now? Steve Parish will feel that he got it absolutely spot on. Will he go for younger personnel? Will he go for a Graham Potter or a Brendan Rodgers? How do you see this unfolding?
I mean, I just want to add to what Nick said about Vieira. I think he will feel a little bit hard done by, because he got let go on the back of a pretty rough run of fixtures, and then they had a slightly more straightforward run of games in which Roy picked up the points. And I think Vieira would have fancied himself to pick up similar amount of points, and I think it was a panic. Obviously, like you said, in hindsight, it was the right thing to do because they've stayed up. But I just want to echo what Nick was saying. I felt a bit for Vieira, because by all accounts, he was fitting in with the club well. Behind the scenes, he was getting involved with the community. He was heavily involved in the youth teams, and a real leader behind the scenes. So I think it was a bit harsh to get rid of him. They weren't playing very well, and we went to the game at the Emirates, and they were terrible. But not many teams went to the Emirates and did well, did they, this season? Opposition sides. But going forward, they're a fairly big club. It's tough, isn't it? Because without massive investment, clubs like Palace will always just remain in and around sort of the middle of the league. They need massive money spent on the squad. Like Nick said, they've got some really good young players, but how many of those are going to remain at Palace for longer than a season or two? Like Eze's quality, I've always liked him. I can't see him staying there. Gahey we've been linked with him, haven't we? And you can see a big move for him. And then obviously Zaha has been their big player, their talisman really for years, and he might be leaving as well. So it'd be a big summer for them, and they do need to get that manager in sharpish. I won't go for Rodgers. I think at the minute he needs to go and rebuild his career somewhere else. He needs to maybe go abroad, or I think Premier League chairman especially are going to be a little bit hesitant to offer him a job because of just how badly that he stank the place out towards the majority of all last season. He was awful. Even if you think back to the back end of the summer when they weren't signing any players, Leicester, and he was publicly coming out and not criticising the board, but just not leading very well and not being decisive. And I think chairman are going to hesitate to sort of, look at him. Potter's a good one, but does he now consider himself to be maybe a little bit above Palace? I don't know. But they do need the right manager, because I think they're not too far away from being dragged into another relegation battle, are they? They finished strongly, but I can't, they need investment, and they need a clear strategy, don't they? And they need a manager who's going to lead from the front, really.
Yeah, it's interesting that you said about Leicester there, because it ties in with the next bit. Paul, there's a situation a few years ago. Leicester were flying, weren't they? They were financially sound. They were driven, full of talent, able to attract and develop top players and sell them on. I mean, everyone was dipping their toe in the old Leicester swimming pool. The Premier League winners in 2015, FA Cup winners in 2021. What went wrong?
Yeah, it's a really fascinating point, that one, Tom, because I think 2 or 3 years ago, Leicester were kind of regarded as a role model club. They were recruiting well, got a good manager, everything appears to be going in the right direction. I think it just shows how standing still can actually cost you dearly, because I think after they won the FA Cup, there was kind of feeling the club then go on to progress. Tottenham seemed to get quite a disappointing European campaign. They dropped out the Europa League, went to the Europa Conference League, didn't make the expected progress in that. And then you mentioned, I think Jay mentioned during the summer, that there was no recruitment during the summer. They didn't bring any players in. And it just seemed to be a case that maybe the manager had lost his powers of motivation. The recruitment hadn't been right. Certain players seemed to be downing tools. And Leicester were quite a predictable team to play against. If you closed Maddison down, you'd more or less stop their main attacking threats as well. So it also didn't help this season the way the fans turned against Rodgers as well. I think you've probably seen, certainly from last few games at Goodison Park, it was so important that the fans stay with the team. And I always got the impression that Leicester fans really just didn't believe they were going to stay up and make their feelings known. But it is a salutary lesson for other clubs that whilst you're doing well, that is the time when you recruit well. That is the time when you bring the better players in. That is the time where you're not just satisfied with where you're situated at the moment. You look to about what's the next stage here. We've won the FA Cup. How do we qualify for the Champions League next season? And it just seems to me that Leicester kind of stood still. And I think when you look at the progress made by clubs like Brighton and Brentford, Leicester certainly have declined compared to their model of recruitment as well. And it's been quite sad to see. Obviously, from a personal point of view, I'm glad Ozenda went down, not us. And but I think the question for Leicester is, where do they go?
Paul. Absolutely heartless. Poor Stacey is probably heartbroken.
Can I just add something just about? Sorry, Paul. I just want to add something about Leicester. Obviously, me and my wife, we go to the games and we follow the club obviously closely. And key players for them, down tools. Tielemans was a massive player for him, and he just, the fans. A long time before Leicester, very early this season, the fans were already not getting on his back, but questioning his commitment. And then Jamie Vardy, Brendan Rodgers wasn't playing Vardy. Vardy was finding himself on the bench and being replaced with Iheanacho and Daka, and they're just nowhere near the quality that was good enough. And then it was interesting when Dean Smith came in, Vardy was put straight back in, and he scored a couple of goals, but this is a 35-year-old Vardy who can't do it anymore. James Maddison, their key man, same as Tielemans, just completely, he was on the beach, or he's at Newcastle, or he's somewhere else. And
Jay, did you think the sale of Casper Schmeichel without having adequate replacement cost Leicester dirty? Because when I watched Leicester first few games this season, I'm looking at Danny Ward in goal, thinking he is not the keeper who's going to get a clean sheet week in, week out. And to me, that's a massive failure of recruitment not to have an experienced goalkeeper to come in and take that position.
You know what, Paul? That is absolutely spot on. Danny Ward was the weakest goalkeeper by a long way, and Schmeichel was a leader there. And me and Stacey said to each other when he left, because he left for Nice out the blue.
It was quite sudden, wasn't it? Yeah.
It was like something's happened behind the scenes there. Something's gone on. And, I think there's also the chairman, Top. I think he was obviously, after the tragedy, the helicopter accident, he was thrust into this position of running the club. And I think there's question marks as to whether he needs help running the club, because he wasn't ready for it by all accounts, and he was just basically thrusted into this position. Yes, they won the FA Cup. The majority of that team was from his dad's investment and his dad's time running the club. But look, it's a shame. Obviously, good for Everton. Obviously, shame Leicester have gone down. And to be honest, we've spoke about this. I'm not entirely confident that they're going to go back up. It's difficult to see where, they're going to have Vardy. He's going to be obviously doing his best, but the Championship is such a tough league. And unless they make some really key signings, because they're going to have mass exodus, there's going to be huge amount of players that are going to leave, and they need to spend the money wisely. Players like Maddison, they'll get money for, maybe Harvey Barnes, but they need a new manager as well. I don't know whether Dean Smith's the right man to get him out of it, but who knows? It's a shame for, and obviously in our house, it's a shame, but not so much for you, Paul, but yeah.
Jay, I mean, going back to the recruitment success, I mean, the 17 million that was received from Fofana, where did that go?
Yeah.
Did that, I mean, that's a vast amount of money that just seems to be lying in the bank somewhere.
I think that's the whole. I think you summed it up in a nutshell there. The death of the owner, the sad death of the owner, and Kasper Schmeichel. I mean, for me, they were explosion points, and you kind of looking at that and the lack of investment as well. When you win the FA Cup, you think, oh, right, we're on the road. We've done the league. We've got the FA Cup. Let's bolster. Let's reinvest. Let's recruit wisely. None of that happened, and it's the young chap who's come in. He's his son, isn't it? He's not doing the job, is he? So
I think he needs some help. I just think he needs some help. But tough times for Leicester. It's gonna be a tough season for him next year, I think. Yeah,
it's one of those. It's easy to kind of drop into the Championship and a devil to get out of. Lauren, we're going to change. We're going to go to Chelsea first. We had Abramovich. He was out, then Bowley came in, spent 600 million, unusually long contracts, a proven manager moved out, 2 lesser managers drafted in, and won twice. I mean, that was good as well. Now Pochettino, it's an absolute balls up down there. Is he the guy to sort this out? And will he be around next January?
I mean, so much happened to Chelsea in just those 9 months. It's crazy, you think back and the summer
and
that they
people are
had,
giving us stick for finishing second.
It's bizarre. I think the weirdest thing that happened this season was Tuchel getting sacked, and that's one thing I just still cannot wrap my head around. I mean, Pochettino, yes, it does make sense, but like you said, he's walking into a very difficult situation. I mean, it's going to be interesting to see what Chelsea do this summer. Obviously they're going to have to offload an awful lot of players, because there's no way that they can keep that squad and keep everyone happy. And even from the financial side of things, they're probably how many players, 20, 30 players on crazy contracts. It's going to be interesting to see what happens in the summer first before we can really say obviously what's going to happen next season. But it's probably the best choice of manager, I think. From their point of view, he's an experienced manager, not only in the Premier League, but also in Europe. Chelsea are probably, they're a weird club, aren't they? Because you never really know what Chelsea are going to do. You really don't. They could come back next season and they could be the ones pushing City for the title, because it's Chelsea, it's just what they do. Honestly, I don't know. I don't know what to expect. I think Pochettino is the right choice for them. I think they need a manager with a lot of experience. I think they need a manager who can deal with egos as well, because it's Chelsea. They have a lot of them in their dressing room. But I'm excited to see where the players go. Hopefully, the right players might come to Arsenal. The right players might stay in the league or go off to different leagues in Europe, and we don't have to think about them. But yeah, I don't know. I couldn't even attempt to guess where Chelsea are going to end next season.
17 players apparently are going to be up for sale. There's a lot more because they loan out about 27 players per season, don't they? Pochettino, Nick, he must be quite frustrated because he's the only man to get a 2-year contract. They're normally handing out a lifetime contract to someone who's about 18. What do you make of the Chelsea mess?
Yeah, I think. Yeah, I very much agree with what Lauren said. It's
I am
Chelsea.
enjoying it though. I must admit, I am
Yeah.
enjoying it.
It's awesome. If I'm the Amazon director, I'm going straight to West London and said, Chelsea, I need you this year. And having that last season would have been crazy. Having that this coming season would be wild. Yeah, I think. Yeah, I agree with what Lauren said. It's Chelsea. You just never know because they had, I think the season they finished outside of Europe. The next season they won the league. But I think without Abramovich, this has all changed. I think the amount of instability around that club has caused them to be where they're at. And I think, yeah, I think Pochettino could be a good hire. I mean, he seems to trust youth players well. He can handle egos, can obviously, he's done it in London, done it in the Premier League, done it in the Champions League to an extent. But I just really think, I think in the end, I think Tuchel left because he didn't have the power he wanted. I think we're still trying to figure out who Todd Bowley is and how much how much trust he has in others. And ultimately he bought the team. So he's going to get the final say. And if that's how it is, he doesn't know anything about the game, respectfully. So he's going to keep buying talent. You know, I've compared it to baseball where he owns the Dodgers. You can buy certain players. You can just buy the best players in each position, throw them in a lineup, and it works. But in the Premier League, especially as the game has evolved, you're needing specific profiles. You just can't. I mean, we've seen that with Kieran Tierney. You just can't throw every left back into every system and expect it to work. And I think they have just have so many profiles. I think they're having so many players that nobody. I don't want to say they're unwanted because they're talented, but I just think it's such a cluster of, okay, we're throwing this together. We saw that under Frank. I mean, he was throwing different lineups in there week in, week out. And I don't know if he was just trying it to see what happened, but Pochettino could do the same thing too. And I don't know. He's going to have a
Frank.
Yeah, I don't feel bad for him at all. That was great. But yeah, it'll be very interesting to see. They obviously have the talent that could do some damage, but just the instability of the club. I mean, a 2-year contract, I think, shows, okay, we're going to see how it goes. And does he finish a season? How long are they going to give him before they think, yeah, he's our guy? What's it going to take? Because if they're hovering mid-table, does he make it to the end of the season? I don't know. And if that's the case,
I've got to be honest as well, with a 2-year contract, it might take him 2 years to get to the first step of improvement.
Yeah, I just think they'll be too impatient. I think seeing Arteta, giving him the time, suffering for a couple of years, you really got to get that hire right, though, and trust them to do it. And I mean, he's done that. So I think that's kind of been the model of, it's just going to take some time, but I just don't know if billionaires have any patience whatsoever to wait for things to come through in the end. Yeah, right.
Jay, is Bowley the main problem here? Is he just like the rich kid who's gone out and bought the shop of sweets with all the contents and just hogging them all? Is that the problem? We got too many round pegs and too many square holes?
Well, it certainly looked like that last year, didn't it? They were just signing players left, right, and centre. And I mean, they're linked with a whole host of players already, aren't they? But
yeah, they're getting a bit short for players.
Yeah, I mean, I think I agree with Lauren as well. There's a real chance that the talent is there, so there's a real chance that they could really push on next season because the players, by all accounts, are good enough. I think it was just last season, Lampard, it just isn't an elite coach. He's just not, and it's just a stopgap, And I think Pochettino is going to be a lot more rigid. He's going to have a lot. He's going to put his own twist on things, obviously. And I think they need a striker. If they get a good striker in, and they potentially, maybe freshen up the midfield. I mean, the midfield's decent, but by all accounts, Kante might be leaving. And I think they're heavily linked with Caicedo as well. So he's a really top player. So I think the players are there. I think Pochettino, it's a tough job for them. I hope, obviously, it goes without saying. I hope it goes wrong, but I think he's in a pretty decent position, Pochettino, because they've been so bad, and there's only one way it can get worse, and that's relegation fight, and they're not going to be in that position. They're just not. So I think
don't tease me, Jay. Don't tease me.
I think a good season for Chelsea would be fighting for the top four. I can't. That's a huge bridge to gap, but I think there's going to be a certain amount of those players that came in last year who would be slightly more experienced, and I think they're going to be a lot more pragmatic. They're not going to be all over the place. It's not going to be all the changes week in, week out, and I think they'll be a lot more competitive. They're not in Europe, and like Lawrence said, Chelsea, they've been a trophy winning machine, and they've won trophies year in, year out, and I expect them to be a bit more competitive, probably in and around sort of the top 8. Maybe a good season though is fighting for top 4, and I mean, I'm not sure I'd have gone for Pochettino. I think Chelsea were in a position where they could have gone for a young, exciting manager. What's the chap's name at Sporting Lisbon? Amarin. Could have gone for someone like that, who up and coming, fresh ideas, exciting. And again, like I said, you're starting from a really low bar. But Pochettino, he's Spurs, isn't he? It's in his DNA. They're not going to do anything. It's just his Spurs. So.
Oh, bad taste in my mouth there. Just the word of it. By the way, Podders, we won't be mentioning that lot. Not mentioning that lot tonight. All Man City, it's been done to death about how brilliant they are, and Pep's brilliant, and we're not doing it. We've had enough. They've said everything there is to be said. Brighton, Paul, De Zerbi took over a well-run club with some real talent in there, but he's really made a difference. He's got under the skin after Potter, hasn't he? He's taken this club on. They're now in Europe. They're looking good. A few additions, and they've got to be top 4, haven't they?
Yeah, I think that the main issue for Brighton, as always, is that already they're starting to sell some of their better players. So McAllister apparently is on the way to the dark side across the park in the next few days, and once again they will bring in they will identify. They've already identified who the players to replace him, but it will take time for that player to hit the heights that McAllister hit. So that's definitely going to be an issue for Brighton. But yeah, in terms of De Zerbi, I mean, he's actually made Potter's success at Brighton not look that good, because he's moving to the next level. And just going back to Chelsea briefly, I mean, when Potter was appointed as manager of Chelsea, I've got a friend who's a Chelsea fan and has messaged him about it. And I say, you do realise that his last few home games at Brighton, the crowd were booing the team because they thought the football was boring, it wasn't exciting enough. They're not doing that to De Zerbi. The football is on the front foot from the first minute. What Brighton will need to do is add an element of consistency to their football if they want to progress to the Champions League places. I mean, they shouldn't be getting beat home 5-1 by us. No way. If you challenge for Champions League place, that sort of result should not be happening. But then again, the performance of Arsenal, winning against them, Paul, it's not for everyone. We could manage it. I know. Well, that's what about consistency that time, because the performance at the Emirates was absolutely superb. So. And I think I watched their cup game against Liverpool this season. They played really well in that. So they're a great football team to watch. They destroyed us at Goodison Park in January 4-1. Absolutely played us off the pitch. In Matoma, the people they pick up for buttons like Matoma, who just comes into the team, like Ferguson, who they bring over from Ireland, and Ciso, who they bring over from Paraguay. They're kind of their scouting recruitment network, based on the data, how it do is must be so good and accurate, because they pick up players. If you compare Brighton's recruitment to Chelsea's, it's miles apart, isn't it? Because they spend little money on being a good players, which Chelsea do the reverse. So very pleased to see Brighton do well. It's good to see a non-traditional team having that level of success as well. And everything about the club seems to be going in the right direction. So yeah, I mean, why shouldn't they be challenging for Champions League place next season? I think the question mark will be consistency, as I said before, and also, is there going to be a revival at Chelsea? Is there going to be a revival at Liverpool? Are your enemies down the road there, are they going to come back with a better team as well? So there's going to be a lot more competition with those places. But at the moment, everything for Brighton is looking really good. And assume that they have replacements ready to take the place of the players they're going to be selling. And you look at Danny Welbeck. I mean, would you guys have thought that Welbeck would still be banging in goals in the Premier League the way he has been?
Oh, Fanny Wellbucket, when he played for us, I mean, it took him 10 shots to get 1 goal. I mean, it was a nightmare. But
I quite liked him. I quite liked Danny Welbeck.
I liked it. I mean, he was a likable lad, wasn't he? He really was. And, just when he started playing, we got rid of him. That's what we do. So we didn't sell him to Everton. Funny you should say their recruitment has been second to none. Curiously, Sam Jewell was appointed head of recruitment at Brighton following Paul Winstanley's move to Chelsea. So there's a little bit of background. Obviously, Potter and Winstanley, and now you've got De Zerbi and Jewell. Lauren, simple question for you. They're in Europe next year. Why would you leave Brighton, where they're all like big stars in a top team that's emerging? Why would you leave to go to another side that maybe might not be in Europe?
I think the only reason you'd leave is to go for a Champions League place, money as well. Money talks, obviously, but I think if I'm a young player at Brighton, even a move to City, it's not even that appealing anymore, because are you really going to get into that squad? Obviously they're pretty well filled out squad. They have about 22 players that could start for any other team in the league. I think, to be honest, maybe if someone like Arsenal, United, I think even Newcastle, I think they're probably the only realistic options for someone from Brighton, or abroad, of course, as well. But in terms of an exciting young team in the Premier League, Brighton is probably where it's at the moment. If you want to be guaranteed game time and you really want to make your mark, I think Premier League and for European football, why would you leave exactly?
Right then, Nick, let's dive down a level or two. Leeds have been on a downward spiral since Bielsa left. Yes, his brand of football cost them goals and points, but they were a much better side under him, weren't they? Better to watch as well. God.
Yeah, definitely. Looking back, it makes me sad that he was shown the door. I think just a living legend in the game. And it was just, he got them to that point. I felt like they owed it to him to let it run its course. And if they went back down, they went back down. And I guess that happened anyways. And us Americans felt like Jesse Marsch got kind of a short leash. I don't know if they would have gotten relegated with him, but man, I really thought Gracia, the first.
Do you think they hit the panic button, Nick? That wasn't working. This wasn't working. So it's just like, get someone else in. Come on, bring someone else in.
Yeah, definitely. And, he didn't even last. And Big Sam couldn't take care of it. Didn't have enough time, maybe. I know that's his game. But, man, I mean, we talked earlier just about the importance of recruitment with Leicester. Like Paul was saying, it's like I guess we're privileged to have transfer windows that we're hoping push us closer to what we want. But I guess you really see the reality of when some of these guys, you spend millions on them, and when things don't quite work out, and the reality of what that can be. And I think for any team, bottom half of the table, that makes your job that much more important. And you just really can't afford to miss, and can't afford to have a window off, or even having one player you're allocating funds to, like, not be that guy. And that's the cruel reality. I mean, the Premier League is turning into the billionaires' playground, and it's becoming like the league in the world. I mean, it always has been, but now it's really becoming to that point. And 1 through 20, these are becoming just, the stakes are higher and higher. The amount of money thrown around is that high. So yeah, I definitely miss Bielsa, and maybe a fitting result for Leeds for sacking him, and getting what they were trying to avoid because of that.
I kind of think that it's kind of payback. I know what you're thinking, Podders. Are these lapels silk? They look it, don't they? Very expensive. It's not. It's a neck suit, by the way. Jay, where do Leeds go from here? There's mention of Steven Gerrard picking up the post. I mean, that's another crazy appointment. Leeds, Leicester, some of these clubs, they're all making these fundamental mistakes and not doing their homework when they're recruiting managers, let alone players.
I mean, Allardyce wasn't the answer.
No, he wasn't.
He's not. He's not the go-to guy anymore. You know, he's been out. He hasn't had a solid job for years, and it was just panic. They should have just stuck with Jesse Marsh, to be honest. Should have just. They were no better. Leeds' problem was just goals, wasn't it? I think they were their performances. I don't think they absolutely. They didn't get trounced by anybody. They didn't get absolutely battered. They just couldn't score, and they heavily rely on Bamford, who I've never massively rated. I think he had a decent season last year, but I think they just need goals, and they couldn't get them. And where do they go now? Wow, that's a huge club. I think their owner has just bought Sampdoria. I think that's right.
Yeah. He was going to use Elevoda security, wasn't he, Jay?
Yeah, and I think he's looking. I think potentially he's looking for a way out. So I think that might not be a bad thing. If they get a takeover from somebody else, with maybe they need, again, like Leicester, any team that goes down, you need to spend your money right, because like Nick was saying, if these transfers go wrong, you're going to be stuck in that division, and that is just a brutal division to get out of, that Championship, isn't it? As we all know. So where do they go? I wouldn't go to Gerrard, not in a million years. He did well at Rangers. He did really well at Rangers, and fair play, but he got quickly found out of Villa. And he's similar. He needs to. What I was saying about Brendan Rodgers earlier, he needs to go and rebuild somewhere else, and jumping head first into the Leeds job. He won't last till Christmas. They need. It's such a tough, because they're a huge club, and they're going to look to bounce back straight away, and they've got to be favourites, I suppose. The key for them is who do they keep hold of? That squad at the moment. I quite like Aronson. The winger. He's a decent player. I can imagine he'll probably leave, and they've got a couple of good midfielders. They'll probably go, but yeah, they need that manager, don't they? But I was surprised they got rid of that Gracia and put Allardyce in, because God, he's an absolute dinosaur. He's just not the answer.
He's as good as Pep and Klopp. He said it. But then he took it back and said, let's just take the heat off the boys, which we all know is a bit of BS. Paul, we're going to come to you. I'm wearing black tie, black jacket. We're going to talk Everton now. It was nearly the funeral, wasn't it? We nearly bought flowers. Everton were back in trouble again. They just seem to lack any form of plan. Again, like we've been talking about, it's a recurring theme about appointments, recruitment, spending massive amounts on ordinary players. They can't be down there for a third season. It can't happen. Sean Dyche will walk if that's the case, surely.
Yeah, I wouldn't guarantee it won't happen for the third season. I certainly think the lack of leadership at the top of the club it's frightening, and has been for the last 3 or 4 seasons now. I know you've referenced about Todd Bowley before, about being like a kid in a sweet shop. I know that was lots of local journalists referred to Farhad Mashiri as being exactly that type of person who just wanted to throw money around without any rhyme or reason. Poor decision making, and you there were a couple of decisions that started the decline. One was appointing Rafa Benitez 2 seasons ago, which was never ever going to work for the Everton fan base.
You've never forgiven him, have you? The old fat waiter.
No, absolutely not. You can't forgive anyone who calls you a small club. And then secondly, Lampard seemed to be the right replacement at the time, but looking back now, Lampard got by not being Benitez. So no matter what he did, the fact it wasn't Benitez meant he almost got a get out of jail free card. Big mistake during the just before the World Cup break, when we lost twice to Bournemouth in a week and conceded 7 goals in the Premier League Cup. That was the time when Lampard should have gone. That's when the deck should have been cleared. But no, he wavers, he doesn't make the decision, and then we end up last 2 or 3 days of the transfer window in January, Lampard goes, Dyche comes in, and then we're scuffling around trying to buy a forward because we haven't got one. And it was always going to be a struggle this season. I think most Everton fans were convinced at this at some stage we would go down this season because people like myself who've seen Championship winning teams as good as Paul, but we're in agreement with that. This was by a long stretch the worst Everton team we have seen play in a long, long time. And there wasn't really much grounds for hope or optimism. You referenced Leicester before, James. I was convinced Leicester would stay up purely because they could score goals. I thought that would put them above Everton. But I think what got Everton over the line was simply organisation brought into the team from Sean Dyche. I think he showed that in his first game against Arsenal, that he managed somehow to get a cohesive unit playing a certain style of football, which might not have been pretty to watch. And he also improved certain players. Dwight McNeil, who we had at Burnley, was a completely different player to the one we saw in the Frank Lampard. And Abdoulaye Doucouré, who Lampard had frozen out, having training by himself at Finch Farm. Dyche brings him back into the team. He scores 5 goals in the second half of the season, and of course scores the goal that keeps Everton up. So nothing's been solved by Everton staying up this season, apart from the fact they maintained their Premier League status. The club is still an absolute mess. It needs investment. It needs a functioning boardroom. It needs a strategic direction. It needs better recruitment. Apparently, at the start of the season, we had a 101-point improvement plan for the club. No one knows what it is. But I think one of the things that is in the minds of most
written on a bus ticket.
Yeah. I mean, Nick mentioned Bielsa there before, and of course, Everton approached Bielsa in January with views from taking the job, and he turned up for the interview with like 100-page dossier on what was wrong with Everton. Now, I don't know if he walked out the office with that dossier in his hand and no one ever got to see a copy of it, because it's one of the mysteries here. What was in that dossier? What did Bielsa see? It's almost like, that Raiders of the Lost Ark. You're trying to find this sacred document that would give you all the answers that you need. But I think unless you change it to
every page had the word shit on it.
It would be the air that he's Spanish.
Well, are you happy to stick with Dyche? Are you happy to stick with Dyche?
I think at the moment, Jay, yeah, because when you were talking before about who could take the Leeds job, who could take the Leicester job, well, I think the same would apply to Everton. Who would be better than Dyche for that particular role at the moment? I think that there are worrying rumours coming out that Moshiri's not totally at ease with a manager like Dyche. It doesn't quite fit his image of Everton having a Hollywood manager. But I think Dyche sees himself at the moment in quite a position of strength, because the fan base might not love him, but they absolutely accept what he's done. They appreciate he's kept the club up. And he was quite hard hitting in his press conference at the final home game of the season, where he made it quite clear, we shouldn't be celebrating staying up. I mean, last year on the Frank Lampard, everyone was dancing in the stands, as Lampard was himself. But this season, it was really, really low key, and that was a real contrast between the two managerial styles. So I think if we've got no money to spend, Dyche definitely has to stay, because he would get the best out of underperforming players. But Everton's problems haven't gone away. Everton's problems are going to be here again next season, unless there's some massive investment and we've got a functioning boardroom, because the whole club at the top is an absolute mess.
Well, it's interesting here. 13 managers since 2013, when David Moyes left. You had 3 in 2016. 747 million euros have been spent on 29 players. I mean, it's quite staggering. Talk about a mess. We're going to move on, Paul. You're going to be relieved. Go on. Sorry.
Yeah, but when you spend that, of that money mentioned there, I think 60 million that went on war costs on a road. So that kind of gives you an indication of the complete lack of, yeah.
And they say we can't sell players well.
When we do, they could change. Just to put that in perspective, Manchester United have spent 1.59 billion euros. Well, what does that say? Moving on, Aston Villa, Lauren. Unai Emery was the surprise choice for Villa after his short Arsenal career, but he's done a fantastic job. Probably taken them to I'm just casting my mind back to their best league position since Martin O'Neill in probably 2010. It's noticeable he's not the figure of fun that he was at Arsenal. People are actually standing up and taking him seriously and appreciating his talent.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, you know, we're mentioning a lot of clubs here and we're talking an awful lot about managers, but I think Aston Villa are the perfect example of just how important it is to get the manager right. Going from Lampard to Emery, I mean, they look like a different team. To be honest, I'm not sure how many players they got in over January or who left over January. I don't follow Aston Villa that closely, but you know, the start of the season towards the end, a completely different team, and I think it was all down to Emery and his experience and being able to get the best out of the players. And you know, it's great to see him do well. You know, we can be bitter and we can be upset and angry that, you know, maybe he didn't get the best out of Arsenal at the time, or, you know, things didn't end as well as it did. But I think it's great to have him back in the league and to get Aston Villa a European spot. I think that's going to be fantastic for them. They play some good football. They have some great players as well. I think they deserve it, and
they've got a game plan now, haven't they?
They do, for
because
sure.
When Gerrard had them, it didn't look the same at all. It was all disjointed. He picked like odd teams, but this one looks good.
For sure, absolutely. And I think, you know what, I think we're realizing now, just because a player was a good player doesn't mean they're going to be a good manager. I think we can leave the days of Lampard and of Gerrard managing firmly behind us now and say it's not going to work. They're not quite cut out for the Premier League just yet. Not everyone's Mikel Arteta, but yeah, no, I think it just really shows the importance of getting that perfect manager in, the right manager for the right club, you know. And credit where credit's due, Emery has done a serious job of Villa, and yeah, I'm happy for them to have gotten a European place, especially ahead of Tottenham. Isn't that fantastic?
Nick, we can look back at Emery and kind of think that that was a job that no one would have done any good in, would it, at Arsenal, because it was so toxic in the boardroom. You had various people, Sven and Raul, pushing and pulling, and Gazidis. I mean, God, it's a nest of vipers, isn't it? He was never going to do anything.
Yeah, I think there always had to be a fall guy, and I don't think Emery was brought in to be a fall guy. I think he was brought in to get us back into Europe, essentially to win the Europa League, which he almost did, and really almost got us back into the Champions League. But I think just stylistically, him, and I think the demotion, maybe not demotion, but the change of title from manager, where Wenger was a manager, to Emery coming in as head coach, I think is a bigger deal than people think. That I just think gives up too much control, and he's just not getting his guys. I know he from what I've heard, he really wanted Zaha and got Pepe. He really wanted, I can't remember who else, but there was another player he really wanted and got somebody else. And I think when you get to that point, you just can't exactly do what you want. And I think Mikel came in, and I don't know if he was head coach right away. I know I think he was, and then got promoted to manager. I think earned that trust, and now he's getting to make his decisions. And it's a big risk. It's a lot of control, but I think as a manager, you want to have that, because in the end, it's you that's going down. So at least be able to make your decisions. So yeah, I felt bad for him. I wanted it to be better, but man, all I can do is think of that Watford game where we gave up 30 shots at Vicarage Road, trying to play out of the back with Socrates and Mustafi and just the Chuckle brothers. And it was, man, those are some dark, dark days, and the PTSD still hits pretty hard. But yeah, glad to see him doing well at Villa. I mean, that's going to be always a tricky place to play, but going to be extra hard, and he's going to be motivated to beat us. I mean, it took an absolute gem of a game for us to claw back to get something from that. So it will be very interesting to see Emery back in Europe, but not with the Spanish club, and see kind of what he can do with that. He obviously is able to go very far in those knockout competitions. Just wonder if Villa has that depth to compete on both fronts now. But yeah, that'll be interesting to follow.
Well, Podders, we're going to accelerate because we've got to get to these awards. That's the main thing. That's the reason you're here. That's the reason I've got this cheap suit on. Manchester United, Jay. Ten Hag has had some success this season, but he'll need to do a lot more to make them actually attractive to watch, won't he? There's still work to do. I'm expecting more in and a great many more out. Let's deal with the elephant in the room. Harry Maguire, eh? what's that about? He's obviously at Leicester. He was a shining light, wasn't he? I suppose when he went to Manchester United, it was all covered over. He fitted in, and it wasn't a big eyesore. But now he's got to move on, hasn't he, to almost save his career?
Yeah, his career is well and truly over. He's and there'll be clubs that will want him because he's not as bad as I think he's demonstrated this season. I just think he's cold. He's coming in. He gets the odd game here or there, and it's tough, isn't it? We've seen with our own players that especially players like Fabio Vieira and certain others that come into the team who haven't played for very at all, and they're expected just to be at that level. And I think he's struggled, and I think he needs to leave. United, look, they're tough. It's a tough. I find it hard to really like. How do we seriously look at them? Like they won the League Cup, but they had the teams they played. Basically, which is the easiest run in cup football history. Then they get to the FA Cup final, and they got battered against City. The Premier League season, whenever they even remotely got sort of mentioned in the title race, they fell apart and they dropped points. And I think the Champions League is probably, I think it was more so they got in the Champions League because, teams like Liverpool and Chelsea and Spurs fell away. Obviously Liverpool had a slight revival towards the end of the season, but more by default that they got in the Champions League. I think they're still way off Man United. I think they need, and they're going to get it. They're going to get the investment. They always do. And I think Ten Hag is a good manager. And I think
he's a bit deluded though, isn't he? Because he said that they're the only side that could take on City.
Post-match, I think if he got asked that again the following day, I think he wouldn't answer that way. I think he's just like, obviously disappointed and
delusional.
We got to see. I don't know if you guys saw Bernardo Silva pushing Fernandes away after the game. I thought it was quite funny. It's always good to see Fernandes disappointed, and I think their fans. I've got a number of friends that are United fans, and they are getting way ahead of themselves. They think they are back in the title race. They think they're back. They're going to be rivaling City, and they're still a long way off. They still need a world-class striker. They need to try and keep Rashford fit for next season. They need a midfielder because their midfield, on Saturday in the cup final, they were a million miles away from City in that department. I think defensively they're all right. They've relied on Martinez at the back, and as soon as he got injured, I think that the level dropped off. De Gea, I mean, what a joke! That second goal on Saturday. I mean, I've never seen a keeper go down so slow.
It's quite weird as well because he won the Golden Glove, didn't he? As well.
Well, I think United they're going to get they always get the back in, but until the takeover goes through. There's going to be that unrest in the stands, the Glazers, that the cloud that comes with the Glazers. Whenever things go badly at the club, the Glazers get blamed. But you can't say that they haven't thrown cash at the team because they've spent ridiculous amounts and they've wasted a lot of it. But I really hope they don't get what they want, and they don't sign the players that they're linked with. I mean, I saw a rumor maybe about a week ago that maybe Neymar might be going there. I hope that kind of signing comes off because he's not the kind of profile that I think United need at the moment. But by all means, go for him because it'll be another Ronaldo, won't it? It'll be another player that would just cause, inadvertently, probably cause a lot of trouble there. So fingers crossed that happens. But
it's such a United signing, isn't it?
Yeah, it really is.
Mock the afflicted. Paul Casemiro. I mean, he's got his fans, hasn't he? Especially among the pundits. He's played some good games, and he is obviously one of the better players in the United side. But let's not get carried away about the best defensive midfielder in the country and all that nonsense.
He quite clearly is not that. I think he thought. I think he had a good first half of the season prior to the World Cup. I think every time I watched him since in the second half of the season, I think he's been way off the pace. Even on Saturday, he was lucky not to get a red card for that early challenge. It was on Silver, was it the challenge? Yeah. So to me, he seems very one pace, very slow, doesn't score that many goals, and I really don't see that he's the long-term answer in midfield for Man United. As Jay's outlined there, in midfield, United are desperately lacking there, and they're nowhere near Arsenal's level at the moment. I can't see them getting anywhere near Arsenal points-wise next season unless they have a massive investment being some really quality players. And they need a goalkeeper undoubtedly, and they've made some poor signings again. Anthony just hasn't done it for me. But Casemiro, I mean, it's to me, the media and press are so pro Man United, it's unbelievable. They're desperate for anything to hang on to boost the team, to make the team far better than they were. I remember kind of being bombarded with the headlines in January saying United have a realistic chance of the treble. They're in the running for these three trophies, and you're saying, no, this is nonsense. This is just not going to happen. Even at the start of the season, when Ten Hag was appointed, Sky Sports bring out the film Ten Hag, the making of the manager. Now, hang on, what's he actually done here? Isn't the hype running a bit faster than the actual achievements here? So yeah, I agree. I think Ten Hag is a capable manager. He's made some good changes. He kicked Ronaldo out, which is good. He dropped Maguire, which he's identified weaknesses in the team. The next stage now is to improve the depth of the squad, to bring some better players. Casemiro, you mentioned Tom. I just don't see he is the man to take them forward. When he can't tackle, and to be a defensive midfielder, you've got to be able to time your tackles correctly. So I don't see him being a major into next season. I think I can't see him do particularly well in the Champions League. Depending on how the ownership situation works out, that could make a massive difference to him possibly, but I really don't see United, doing any better next season, league position-wise, than what they have done this season.
Right, we're going to touch on two other teams, and then we're going to get to the awards. We're going to talk about Arsenal, obviously, because it's an Arsenal thing podcast. But Lauren, Liverpool, they've underachieved massively, haven't they, this season? They've struggled. Klopp has tried to put a brave face on it and say, Europa. It's a European competition. We're going to be in that. 600 million spent under Klopp since his arrival. But I've always felt that they missed a trick in the summer. They didn't really bolster the squad. They went with what they had, and that was a massive mistake, surely. I keep saying surely. I don't know why.
I think so. I mean, one thing that I always think about is the level that Liverpool went to last season. They played every single game they could play. They were in it right until the very end. And I think, like you said, they just didn't get in enough players. They lost a few players. They lost a few players over the summer as well. They just looked very tired. They looked a bit off the pace at the beginning. I mean, not at the beginning. They bet, was it Bournemouth? They bet 9-0 at the beginning, and we kind of thought, okay, it's going to be a good season for them. But it was a weird season for Liverpool for sure. I do kind of understand Klopp's. It is positive that they did get European football because it looked a bit questionable at times. But I think there's a lot of factors. Injuries, the hangover from last season, the lack of recruitment as well. I think if it was any other manager other than Klopp, he probably would have been questioned, but it's Klopp. He's achieved so much there over the past few years. I don't think there was any questions really raised there. A strange season for them. I think Europa League is they're probably happy enough with that. They probably have a very, very good chance of going to the final and probably winning it with the level of quality that they have, without stressing themselves too much, injuries provided as well. And it'll be interesting to see what they do over the summer. They're obviously heavily linked to McAllister. I haven't really been following Bellingham either, but if they were to get those two players, I think it's a different story. It's a different Liverpool team that we'd be looking at. yeah, no, it'll be interesting to see what happens next season. I do think that they're going to come back a lot stronger, and I think they're going to easily push for fourth. I don't think that's a question. I think they will probably come back and get fourth next, be in the top four next season. It's just a matter of, who they get in, how they recruit, if they're able to keep all their players fit, and just wait and see how they get on with that.
It's going to be quite interesting because there's so many teams that potentially could be in the top four. It could be probably one of the more exciting seasons. And I'm glad of it as well, because you don't really want it to be a 2-horse race or something like that. You want about 5 or 6 teams competing. Right, let's Van Dijk, Nick. Is it some sort of coincidence that Van Dijk had that injury and has slipped off the pace? He's about a yard short now. And then Liverpool have started sort of waning as well.
Yeah, I don't think that's a coincidence. I think he was that good of a player. I mean, his purchase pushed them over the edge. And I think Arteta really talked about how somebody on the ball like that can play a 60-yard ball just straight to exactly where he needs it. And that can kill any press. And they really relied on him to do that, to play through lines. I mean, just a great defender, great in the air. But I think any knee injury, especially with him, he's over 30, and I think that changes. And he's a bigger guy, naturally, as a center back. I think that is even more taxing on that type of body. So, yeah, I don't think that's a coincidence at all. They brought in Konate. I thought he looked solid. I mean, Allison had to be their player of the year. Trent, people are really down about Trent. I think he needs to move into the midfield. Nobody's going to be a right back like him, but I think for the longevity of his career, him in the midfield would be great. I think Andy Robertson has taken a step back. Their whole midfield is a little bit in shambles. You had Henderson, Milner, Fabinho. He was out for a little bit. Thiago's out for a little bit. You have young Harvey Elliott. So not really the stability there. Naby Keita was out a lot. So you look at that back line in that midfield, and then Luis Diaz was hurt. And then all of a sudden, wow, they're not the team that was pushing City. I really think you really have to have that starting 11, maybe one, depending on who you can maybe afford to rotate one guy or have one guy injured. But we saw that with us. I mean, we had one guy out, and all the gears just weren't quite the same. And I really think Liverpool, I mean, they had that on lots of injuries, maybe guys. I mean, they pushed it to the brink for a couple of years. I just think you can only do that for so long and expect to get up for it the next season. And I think they're maybe just a bit weathered from that. So they're going to need some fresh legs. And I think McAllister be a decent signing, and we'll see what else they get. But yeah, you're very right, Tom. Van Dijk going down, that changed a lot.
Right, let's just finish off with Newcastle. As I say, we're not going to mention City, what we have, or Spudleys. We're not going to do them. It's going to be an interesting season, Jay, going forward with Newcastle. There's going to be a lot of pressure on Eddie Howe. Can they kick on from this point? They're going to get the investment, no doubt, but it's all about getting that top four this season for them.
They will kick on, regardless, with or without Eddie Howe. They're going to quickly rise. I think they're probably a season or two ahead of themselves. Got in the Champions League already. They've got a good team, really strong defensively, and they've got goals. Isak looks superb. Like, really, I mean, the game at Goodison, Paul, Isak on that left side.
He was superb, Jay, as you say. Yeah.
Really good performance.
Very tricky.
And, they're going to get stronger, and it's only a matter of time before Howe gets replaced. He's done a really good job, but he's going to get replaced with somebody of a slightly higher caliber, I would presume. Maybe not, but that's just what I think. They're going to win something probably next season, one of the cups maybe, and probably go quite deep in the Champions League, because they're going to spend a lot of money. The FFP, I think they can spend more now, because they're obviously in the Champions League, and they're a side that, whether you like it or not, they're going to be staying at the top of the league. They're not going to be a one-season wonder. They're going to be there for years now, and they're a team that are very much in direct competition to us, and we need to. It's a tough game. Always a tough game going to Newcastle, and yeah, they're a rival, and I'm not sure. Like when you talk of world-class players, they're really going to have to pay them a lot, because who wants to live in Newcastle, right?
In the winter, it's bloody freezing up there. It's horrible.
Who wants to live in the northeast?
Snapping your breath off and putting it in your pocket. That's how cold it is. Yeah, I totally agree. We're going to make that short, really, because we want to press on with the awards. But yeah, Newcastle in a fantastic position. They've got a good manager. Although I'm not sure, and I'm not sure we're convinced, Podders, that Eddie Howe will be there for too much longer when they hit that height that they need to hit to justify all the money and everything else. Right then, here we go. I asked the guys to put together their candidates for goal of the season first. Let's have game of the season, because that's a really chewy one. Nick, what's your game of the season for the Arsenal? Me and Lauren will deal with the WSL, because I'm a firm fan favorite of the girls this year.
Yeah, I think game of the season, to me, it came down to the one that I don't have to think hard about, and I just remember it, and that was the 3-2 win over Bournemouth. I mean, it had about everything in it, and I was afraid it was going to turn into Danny Welbeck scoring that late winner versus Leicester, and I'm afraid it has. Yes, I'm afraid it has all of that. I mean, just a legendary moment that in the end turns to nothing. But I hope not. I mean, giving up a goal, 10 seconds in, and then giving up another goal in the second half, and then fighting back, and just that type of winner, that had to be an electric. The scenes were unbelievable. And, I think just as a fan, it just gave you the hope, like, we can do this. And I think it's been a while since we had the belief, like, we might do this. I think since that exact Danny Welbeck goal, we had been lacking in just for who we are as a club, thinking, are we actually going to do this? Or I think that we could do this. And that was as close as we could be. And just to see, I think the stadium in a scene like that at that point in the season was really special, and a special time for Reece Nelson too. I mean, it seems like he's going to be signing on, and hopefully he can continue to progress forward, and just a huge moment for him. But that is one I surely won't be forgetting. Lots of great candidates for games of the season, but that one surely takes the cake for me.
Jay, what about you? Game of the season?
Game of the season, I am going to go for the United game at home, the 3-2. Two massive rivals with a huge sort of storied history, and they'll always be, to me personally, like, our biggest rival. Dislike them the most, and we were in the ground, and I mean, this season has been, and for all of us, I mean, maybe obviously less so for Paul, but this season it's been long. It's been amazing. And we're all obviously disappointed at the end that it didn't end the way we wanted it to. But it's been such a brilliant journey. You know what I mean? Without sounding too dramatic, but it's been such a great experience to see the team grow, and the few setbacks that we had, we fired back straight away, and so many great wins and so many great performances that built character, and we saw the team develop, and I had some great times this season with my son, in the ground, but also watching the game in the pub or in here, and that on that day, when Saka scored that 30-yarder, the stadium was just wild. Obviously, it was superseded by the Bournemouth, the Nelson's goal at the end, Nick was just mentioned, and then Nketiah gets that goal at the end, and it was genuine belief. It was the belief that all of us had, you know, you didn't want to believe it because you don't want to be disappointed if it doesn't happen. And on that day, we left the ground, and you know, we were leaving the ground, and you had grown men just kissing you and hugging, you know, strangers just hugging you and shaking your hand, and you know, and you could, you know, I'm sure away games and the majority of the home games as well, that was just like that all through the season. And that United game was the best atmosphere I've ever experienced inside that stadium. And it just, you know, against United, Nketiah, you know, scoring, but everybody doubted him, you know, with when Jesus got injured, great for him to get the goal. But you know, when Saka scored that goal, and I don't know if you remember, but when Rashford scored, he did that celebration and then Saka just did it in the same corner. You know, I love that. I love that stuff. You know, so yeah, that for United, beating United at home 3-2 for me.
What about you, Paul? Favorite game that you've watched, the Arsenal?
I think it was the 2-0 away with Newcastle towards the end of the season. And a couple of reasons for that, because 2 weeks prior to that, City had beaten Arsenal quite convincingly 4-1. There's real question marks being raised about whether Arsenal could take the title race to the wire or not. So going away at Newcastle was a real tough test. Also bearing in mind they were giving away 2-goal leads to Liverpool and West Ham as well. And the first 10-15 minutes, it was absolute bombardment for Newcastle. I think Isaac hit the post. There was the penalty which they thought had been awarded that got overturned. But gradually, Arsenal managed to get themselves back into the game. They silenced the crowd. They started playing their football. And then he scored a superb goal from Erdegaard to put them 1-0 up. And then Newcastle hit them again at the start of the second half, but they kept to the game plan. Martinelli was caused all sorts of problems on the left flank. And then he cut in, and there was an own goal of Shaw, I think it was, to put Arsenal 2-0 up. And I just thought that was the best performance away from home and seen from Arsenal this season, because Newcastle, I think they lost 1, maybe 2 games at home prior to that match, and they were really on a roll as well. So it just shows, I think there've been question marks about Arsenal's character, and I think they answered all those questions on that particular game. And yeah, I thought it was a superb performance at a really difficult ground from start to finish, and it just to me was indicative of the new resilience and self-belief that Arteta brought to that side.
Brilliant. Lauren, what's yours?
Yeah, you haven't really left me with much here now, guys.
We've all sort of wandered off in different directions, which
Yeah,
they're all winners, these games. They stand out in the mind, and viewers, you'll be looking at this thinking, yeah, I agree with that one, or not so much that one, but they're all very memorable matches. Lauren, sorry.
No, don't worry. Mine was Bournemouth as well. I mean, that was the moment of the season for me. I said that, I think, on the last match as well. But you know, another game that had that similar energy was obviously the Villa game.
Oh yeah,
that was a great one as well. I mean, it's so many moments from that game. From Jorginho's, not even, it was Martinez's own goal, wasn't it? To Martinelli scoring in the open goal from the corner. I mean, that was another moment. It was one of those almost pinch yourself moments when you're thinking, God, things are going too well now, and you just have to kind of just enjoy those moments, and you kind of forget in the grand scheme of things what it means. You just really enjoy what the result on the day and what happens. But yeah, same energy as that Bournemouth game. It was a tough one. It was a really long afternoon, but you know, at the end of the day, you get the 3 points, and you just pure ecstasy. Yeah.
Well, mine was the 3-2 win at the Emirates, Arsenal versus Liverpool. It was a result that was long overdue, and I was just willing them on. And it was, we surrendered the lead twice, which was annoying. We're good at that. And that sublime opening goal by Martinelli, precision pass from Martin Odegaard. We love that boy.
Can I just say one more thing? One thing? It must have been a good season if none of us have chosen either of the Spurs wins.
Yeah. Good point. Yeah, we don't talk about them. Anyway, Lauren, let's just push on with the WSL. What was your game of the season?
I mean, actually, none of the games that I had for the women were in the WSL. One was obviously the Conti Cup final against Chelsea, winning that, you know, first bit of silverware in a long, long time, which was great, especially against Chelsea. Having gone 1-0 down in the first 2 minutes, I thought, God, it's going to be a very long afternoon. But, you know, the girls did what they've done all season. They were resilient. They fought back. And to get, you know, in such an injury-struck season, to get us any sort of silverware was a miracle. Yeah, so that was a great one. But I mean, obviously, and I think you had this as well, Tom, was the game against Lyon early on in the season, when I remember being on the pod saying, you know, it's going to be a tough one. We just need to make sure that we don't let them score too many. And we ended up winning 5-1 away from home. I mean,
That's
what
when
a time.
you put the mockers on them and they always come good, don't they?
Yeah,
Mine
keep doing it.
Mine is the one against Wolfsburg in the second leg of the Champions League. It was just riveting stuff. I just couldn't take my eyes off it. It was so much strength, desire, the injuries and everything else. I mean, it pretty much sums up the girls this season, really digging deep and putting in a performance, and it was edge of the seat stuff. And it was just so disappointing. We wouldn't have won it, obviously, because of Barcelona. They're so superb. But I loved every aspect of that game. It was a proper contest, even though we were down. We weren't out, and we've done that so many times this season. Right, let's move on to goal of the season. We'll start with you, Nick. Who's your goal of the season?
Yeah, I feel like Nelson is the obvious choice, but I went with Partey versus Tottenham. I thought that was just really after how many he put in Rosette, I felt like that was he finally got it right in a game like that. It was really fitting and started that game off really well. So yeah, I loved that one.
Is that your little one in the background as well?
Yeah.
Obviously likes the party goal.
Yes, he was all about it. He's agreeing as well. So
Hey,
yeah, and then
while they're young.
Partey went and did it against Forest a couple weeks later too. So glad to know he's got it in him after how many had to hit some bystanders. So.
Well, it's like he's on the edge of the box and someone passes to him and you think, why have you done that? And then he does something like that. He does a real zinger and you think, oh, right, okay, different ball game.
He can do it in a game like that. It was awesome. So that's what I picked.
Jay, what about you?
Yeah, I mean, Nelson, obviously, that will be the goal everybody remembers. But like I mentioned earlier, Saka against United, that was my favourite goal of the season. There was one that we were robbed of, which was Thomas Partey away at Spurs, when he absolutely thunderbastard that one right onto it was like a stanchion. Oh, we were robbed of a great goal. But yeah, I'm going to go for Saka against United.
What about you, Paul?
Well, a lot of mentioned this before. I'm still going to give it to Jorginho. That goal against Aston Villa had absolutely everything. It stopped its time. I remember we watched this in the gallery at Goodison Park. Everyone looked at the screen. And when the corner came up, when the pass came over, Jorginho was in acres of space. So the Villa defence said, it's okay, he can have a shot. We're not really bothered about him. And the power, the accuracy of the shot, and then the perfect twist of fate, it hits the bar, hits Martinez's head, and goes in. Absolutely superb, brilliant
That's
goal.
the main thing I like about that, because we've lost him. He's run off somewhere. I think he's got a little one, obviously, so he's probably had to change. They don't call it nappies, do they? They call it diapers. So he's probably got to do that. But yeah, I totally agree. That was the best thing about that goal, Paul. Was it hit the orange blob on the way in?
Yeah.
Cocky bastard.
Yeah, I had every element that you want on a classic goal.
Lauren, over to you.
I'm getting a bit annoyed here because not only does Nick have the same shirt as me, he had the same game, he also had the same goal of the season. I sent this to Tom earlier. Yeah, I mean, that Partey goal was the one for me. Almost all of Saka's goals were breathtaking. It is one at the end of the season against Forest. I don't think that's been spoken about enough. The way he curved that ball in was exceptional. Other goals, I'm trying to desperately think now. Saliba's goal, obviously, as well. Thinking back to Zinchenko's reaction to that was fantastic. Yeah, but for me, to be completely honest, that Partey goal was a piece of art, and one that won't be forgotten.
Well, I couldn't decide. I mean, there's been so many good goals this season, and that's why we're suffering trying to pick 'em, podders. Mine was the Reece Nelson banger at Bournemouth. I mean, that, you know, when you're in, I was in my living room screaming my guts out because it was that, it's nearly over. And then he does that. And it just seemed like you just willing him to take this shot. And he did it. And it went in like a rocket. It was one of those bits. He'll never live that down. He'll carry that goal. It'll be the John Barnes goal for England, I think, against Brazil, wasn't it? And the other one was Jorginho, Aston Villa, as we've just touched on. Peter, I was so pleased for him as well, because obviously there's that thing with the Chelsea players that we bought in the past, which have been absolutely 24 carat turd. But he actually did well for the Arsenal. Let's talk about the girls. Have you picked one for the girls, Lauren?
Of course I have, and it was obviously Katie McCabe's goal against City in the WSL. It was 2-1 to City at the time, and Katie got the ball from a short corner, and she whipped it in. I mean, for me, that was Arsenal goal of the season. It was a stunner.
That's it. Pinch my one.
Yeah.
You're doing a nick on me now. Yeah, it was a corker, wasn't it? It was right up there. But I also had Vivian Miedemar's stunning goal for Arsenal against Everton. Sorry, Paul. Won the Sky Goal of the Month award for December. Brilliant, top player. But yeah, what can you say about McCabe? She's one of the shining lights of that Arsenal team. What about our outstanding player, Jay? We've lost Nick, so we'll bypass Nick, and hopefully he'll be back. Here he is. Sorry, Jay. We're stopping. We're dropping downstairs to Nick. Outstanding player, Nick. Who you got?
Yeah, I had to go with Odegaard for sure. I mean, Saka 3 years straight would be he deserved it too, but I just think the level that Odegaard reached, I mean, being one of the highest scoring midfielders in the league ever, was tremendous. I thought he was almost unplayable in the majority of games. First full season as captain. I mean, I'm just excited for him to continue to kick on. I mean, his career with us coming on loan and then just keeping him has been awesome. So
have you got
Odegaard
a baby on your lap, Nick? Have you got a baby in that? Yeah, I thought, because there was the rocking motion, I thought, being a dad, you just know, don't you? Rocking backwards and forwards.
Fun and being a dad, and you'd be a future Gooner. But yeah, Odegaard for sure.
That's absolutely brilliant. Nice to see him as well. Jay, what about you?
Yeah, I agree with Nick. Odegaard, just so consistent. Just goals, assists, led by example. There were players, in this, Saliba first half of the season was unreal. Saka for 3/4 of the season was unreal as well. Martinelli really good. Ramsdale superb. Jorginho good. Zinchenko amazing. But I think Odegaard just for his consistency. And yeah, I can't really add too much to what Nick said. He did it perfectly. But yeah, just consistently our best player and unbelievable talent. So yeah, very lucky to have him. So Odegaard, yeah, absolutely.
Paul Mack.
For me, my player of the season would be Ramsdale, because I think the goalkeeper is such a crucial factor in any team's title challenge. When you look at some of his rivals like Lloris, De Gea, who've all had pretty full seasons, I think where Ramsdale stood out was in the big games. I mentioned the Newcastle game before. He put off a string of saves. He made some wonderful saves at Anfield when Liverpool were bombarding Arsenal. I just felt throughout the season he was consistently at the top of his game. So for me, it's Ramsdale.
Lauren.
Yeah, I went with the maybe safe option. I went with Saka. It's a bit boring, but I just thought, I mean, at some points of the season, he was probably the best player in the world in his position. I mean, he's so young still, and like Nick said, okay, he's got it for the past 2 years, but I mean, you just have the feeling that the whole Arsenal team is built around him almost in a way. He is he's the embodiment of everything that it means to be an Arsenal player coming up from the academy. It's so inspiring to see, and it's hard not to give it to him. One player I would like to mention as well is Gabriel. I think he's been so consistent for us as well. It's hard to give it to him. Obviously, I think had Saliba have stayed fit, we probably would be able to, I suppose, celebrate him a bit more. It's a bit disappointing that we can't, but I think in terms of individuals, Gabriel was always pretty solid as well. But for me, it was Saka.
Yeah, I went with Martin Odegaard. Talking about Saka, I think Arsenal have got to work out how to get the best out of the left side, because with Ben White and Saka, we always get the gold sort of procession down that right-hand side. But it's not always the case on the left. And I think it's one of the areas that Arteta has to look into. But Martin Odegaard, for me, 100% with his commitment, his energy. He's not a shouter and a screamer as a captain, but he's very influential. It's the play, and I love that element where he can just sort of work in a very tight area where he's got two players on him, and somehow he just skips out of it. It's incredible, phenomenal talent, probably one of the best players in that position we've had for a very, very long time. Who was it for the WSL, Lauren?
Obviously it was a tough one with all the injuries, but for me it was definitely Frida Manum. So yeah, another Norwegian gunner there. I thought she was probably the most consistent player. She really stepped up in big games. Even when Miedema was fit, you know, she put her on the bench, and it's not an easy thing to do, putting Viv Miedema on the bench. For me, she was the standout player. She oozed class, and she looked world class at times. So obviously it's a bit more difficult in a weakened team, but yeah, she always brought it.
Well, for me, it was Katie McCabe. You might be pleased to learn. But a phenomenal talent and very consistent, and always brings it, leaves everything on the pitch, and you can't ask for more than that. And as I say, it could have been any one of about three, really, but you know, you can see different things in different players. But well done, the girls, and especially Katie McCabe, who we like and favour ridiculously. Best young player, we'll start with Nick.
Yeah, I had to go with Saka. If I wasn't going to give him player of the season, had to do that. And I feel like most of you guys, if he's not one, he's going to be number two. And I just can't believe he's only 21, and just saw something today that he's the third most valuable player in the world. So not bad for a left back, right? So just running out of things to say about him. So happy that he signed the new contract. And I mean, he is the franchise, and I'm not going to be surprised, I think, when the Arsenal awards come out. If he wins player of the season, it'd be 3 straight years. And so, yeah, if he's not my player of the season, he's going to be the young player of the season for sure. And just so happy for him, so happy he's ours. And he's just shown the progression in his game. And I'm just excited to see that in the Champions League. So many of our players haven't ever done that, and him, our crown jewel, just so excited for him. He deserves that. And I mean, I think it's been a long time since we've seen somebody play for the badge like he does, especially at his age. It's really impressive. Yeah, it really is. And yeah, him and Arteta have a great connection too, you can tell, and just the trust and the belief there. And I think that's accelerated his game. So just really just excited for him to continue to mature and grow, and just he's one of ours, and makes it really special too. So Saka.
Well, let's not forget, I think it was, if I'm correct, and you'll let me know if I wasn't, Podders, that it was Unai Emery that gave Saka his first break. Let's move on to Jay, young player of the year.
I'm going to go for William Saliba. The impact that he had at the start of the season, and he just, because I suppose there was that I wouldn't say doubt, but uncertainty maybe that he'd done well in France, but how was he going to do in the Premier League? And I mean, generational, this guy is, he's an absolute beast. The presence on the pitch and the way that he just effortlessly just glided through games and owned strikers and scored great goals. And absolutely terrific player. And we need to get him signed up, because the guy is going to be ridiculously good. I am a bit worried that he's not going to sign. I've got a,
Yeah.
I'm not that confident, but fingers crossed he does sign, because I mean, like Lauren said earlier, the partnership that him and Gabriel had earlier in the season was superb, and if he would have stayed fit, I think we would have won the league. I think we wouldn't have dropped anywhere near as many points. He added that the confidence that he gave to the rest of the team, allowed them to play with a lot more, freedom and fluid passing, and his absence really hurt us. So best young player. I mean, best young player for me, most exciting young player in the league, ahead of anyone else, including Haaland, because he's just, everyone knows what Haaland is. He's just a ridiculous, just cyborg. But Saliba, unbelievable. Get him signed up. Great first season, and fingers crossed he can get fit and be, starting for us next year.
Yeah, it's an odd one with Saliba's contract because, he's only done one really good season, his first season in the Premier League, but there's so much potential there that maybe Arsenal should take a punt on him. Apparently he was on 40 grand a week, and now it's kind of stretching out to about 120, I think the offer was, but it needs to be higher. So we'll see how that goes, but I totally agree. He needs to be signed up ASAP. Paul, young player.
Yeah, I was going to go for Saka, but seeing as Nick's gone for Saka, I'll go for Martinelli. I thought his best season in an Arsenal shirt. He added something on the left flank that I think the side needed. He contributed, I think, the second highest number of assists for Arsenal this season as well. Plus his goals, he's double figures in goal and in his goal scoring. And he's only 1 month older. He's only 1 month older than Saka. So yeah, I'll say Martinelli.
Okie doke, Lauren.
Yeah, I was also going to go with Martinelli. But
Sorry,
you know what?
Lauren.
That's okay. Don't worry. It's just I'm the last one being asked, so I'm running out. But the joy with our Arsenal team is we have about 10 players we can pick from who are a young player of the season potentially. So maybe I'll say Ramsdale. I don't know, but Martinelli was my first choice.
Don't change your mind just because someone else has had it.
No, but as you mentioned there, Tom, even with the issue at, he didn't really have that support that Saka did on the right wing, but he was still able to pull it out, and I'm excited to see that man play in the Champions League. Let me tell you that. I think it's going to be fun to watch.
Sorry, guys, I'm going to be really predictable and say Bukayo Saka, because he's just been instrumental this season for key periods of the campaign, and he's really delivered the goods. He looks more polished, he looks more accomplished, and you can where's the ceiling? How far can he go? That's the big question, because he's got everything in his locker. I just hope that we get some cover in for him so that we don't kill him, because that's the way we're going. We cannot overuse him next season. That's the problem. Lauren, what about the girls? Who have you got?
It's an easy choice, and it's Palova. Came in January. She took to it like a duck, to water. I'm excited to see what she does next season. Having a bit of preseason under her belt. She's very young, 20, 21. I'm not sure exactly how young, but she looks like a seasoned professional already. And
I've got 23 here, but I'm not sure. Dave did the research. And Dave, he does like a Stella while he's doing the research, so I don't really know whether that's correct. But I totally agree with you. Shone so brightly, and I think she's going to be an outstanding player for us in years to come, and next season in particular. Right, the Merit Award for a player that has exceeded all expectations, Nick.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to go with Leandro
that's a long
Trossard.
title. It doesn't actually fit on the base. Be round the corner, wouldn't it, and on the back.
Give it the acronym. Yeah, I'm gonna have to go with Trossard. I know he's accomplished within the league, but I don't think there's any way we expected him, especially with missing out on Mudryk and how hurt we all felt by that saga. I don't think anyone had any expectations for Trossard other than to be a hearty backup. And I really think without him, knowing how the season went, we would not have been fighting for a title that long and might have been in more of a fight for second place than we thought. I really think he made that big of a difference for us, and very excited to see him next year, him as well in the Champions League, him as well. I think he's going to find ways to get lots of minutes with or without injuries with everyone else. I think he's proven his worth, and great player at Brighton, but totally different playing for Arsenal than it is for Brighton. Different systems, different expectations, and he has exceeded my expectations for sure.
What about you, Jay? Where are you sitting on this one?
Yeah, exceeded expectations. Can I choose the fans instead of a player?
Yeah.
The fans have by a million times exceeded my expectations. And I know it's linked to how well the team are playing and winning, and but home and away, the away fans have always been pretty good, but at home, that stadium is different now, and it's for so many different reasons. Mikel, when he first came in, highlighted the disconnect between the fans and the team, and the club was just so disjointed, and that's completely changed now. That's it's the complete opposite of that, and the fans, that just unbelievable, really superb, best fans in the league by a long way, and the Emirates is a brilliant place to be now, and it's not always been that way. So the fans for me.
Excellent. And it's been very noticeable, whether you're actually in the stadium or you're at home or in the pub, you can hear those fans above. I mean, to go to St James's Park and play there and still hear your away fans above the home fans is incredible. And they've
even when we've been beat, when we've been beat or when we've conceded a goal, the fans straight away are behind the players, and it's been next to no criticism of the players in the ground, and just so good, so fantastic.
Well, Nick's nipped off because Nick Jr. has probably thrown up on his trousers, but we'll push on to Paul, who exceeded all expectations for you.
Well, I'm going to go left field a bit, like Jay's just done there. And to me, Mikel Arteta has exceeded all expectations this season, because I think being on this pod last year, I remember there was one particular individual who really thought Arteta wasn't the answer. And
he still doesn't.
And I don't think any of us last season saw Arsenal challenging for the title. I think any of us saw Arsenal being top of the league for so many weeks during the Premier League season. So to me, Mikel Arteta completely exceeded all sorts of expectations. And bearing in mind he's still the youngest manager in the Premier League, the future's looking bright.
Absolutely. Lauren, what about you? Where are you pitching your tent?
I did have Saliba, but I think that is a bit too, I don't know, it's a bit safe. So I'm going to change it up. I'm going to go with Nketiah, because I think we were very worried when Jesus got injured in the World Cup. And I think he came in and did more than any of us expected him to do. He really stepped up when it mattered and showed why, Mikel trusted him and gave him that contract extension, or the new contract last summer. And, special shout out to Nelson as well. When he came in, every time he was called upon, he produced. Obviously, the Bournemouth game is the obvious one, but there was another game early in the season, and I can't remember who it is against, but he came on for Saka, who went off injured. Forest, and he scored the 2 goals. And that very early in the season, you kind of start thinking then, okay, look, maybe we do have the squad depth to exceed our expectations here, But no, I think Nketiah probably would be my final choice there, final answer.
I went safe, Lauren. I went for Saliba because he was an unknown commodity coming in. He'd been on loan for a couple of seasons, and then when he did come in, which we were all willing him, probably tail end of the previous season, we were saying, why aren't they bringing him back? Why isn't there a clause in this loan deal to get him back in? And then when he comes in, it's just class, and it's kind of jaw dropping, because he's doing this very mature, very assured, very calm work, and which is beyond his years, really. It's those sort of elements that you get from I'm not saying Podders, I'm not saying it's these people exactly, but it's that composure, like a Tony Adams, a Keown, a Bold, a Bobby Moore, people like that, people who just ooze that sort of class and assuredness. So that's the one for me. What about the women?
Yeah, it was a tough one. all of them in a certain way, because I know I go on about this, and I hope next season is going to be very different. But the injuries this season, every player stepped up when they needed to. But the one person I picked out here was Ford. I thought Caitlin Ford had an exceptional season on the left wing. Obviously she's Australian. Australia have the World Cup this year, so I think there is that probably extra bit of pressure on her there to perform before going to the World Cup. But I thought she was very consistent throughout. She created so many chances. She looked dangerous every time she got the ball. But it was a very tough choice, and I think there was a lot of contenders who I could have named.
Well, I went for Palova again. I'm just waxing lyrical about her, really, because she's just such a talent, and there's much more to come. Right, let's go on to the Viewers and Listeners Award for the Player of the Season, as voted for on my Facebook and via email to it'sanarsenalthing4@gmail.com. The winner was, let's do it in reverse order. Martinelli got 2% of the vote. At least he got counted in there. Saka got 3%, but the overall winner, Martin Odegaard. It just rained in. It got quite boring. It got quite boring reading it. It was Odegaard. And Manham for the girls. Ford and McCabe were in there. It was a bit of a stretch because some of the girls that were injured would have probably obviously got on there. Right, Podders, I know you've had enough. We all have. But we've just got a couple of things I just want to pick your brains with. Nick, UEFA have rightly singled out Jose Mourinho as they announced a raft of charges against Roma and Sevilla for the Europa League final. Mourinho confronted Anthony Taylor in a car park. I don't know whether you saw it, but it was absolutely disgusting. Mark Housey has come out, ex-referee, and said that there should be a ban for 6 games. I don't agree. I'm thinking of a season. What do you think?
Who wants to be a ref anymore? You see things like this, and you realize if they can't be protected, you will wonder why the quality of refereeing is so low. Who in their right mind would want to do it? If they obviously get this flack at the stadium every single game, if they can't leave there feeling protected or go on and live a normal life, who's going to want to do that? And eventually we're going to have robots do it anyways. So, yeah, I really feel bad for him. He's a ref, so of course we're not going to love him. I think he traditionally does a good job. When we have him, he is not on my least wanted list. So I guess that probably says a lot for him. But yeah, I think, if you want this to keep happening, you slap the wrist. But if you really want to draw a line and protect refs, you maybe come down a little harder. So,
well, I think it gives out the wrong message, doesn't it, to angry fans? We're all passionate. We all like the emotion of the game. The managers up and down the touchline remonstrating, players arguing, and all that sort of thing. But this has just gone to another level, and it's a level that you don't really want to see in the game, because some arsehole fan will probably think it's okay to go on and punch a ref or worse, and that's the thing we're up against, isn't it, Jay? That you've got to tackle this head on. 6 games is nowhere near enough. It's got to be maybe 6 months, a season. It's got to be high, and it's got to be heavy.
Yeah, but UEFA aren't exactly known for their ability to deal with any sort of, racism, for example. They're not great at dealing with that, are they? So I don't really hold out any hope. I mean, Mourinho is just a muppet. Like, he's past his best. That was really, really, lacking any sort of class. But that's Mourinho to a T. So I hope they do. Nothing will be done. He'll get a few matches. That'll be it. The UEFA won't do anything about it. They should. I mean, I presume you saw the footage at the airport of the referee getting, that. I mean,
his poor girl. I take it that was his girlfriend or his wife, and she had to run through.
I think there was some. I think that he had some friends or family behind him that were like protecting him. Like, luckily they were there, because if he was just there on his own with his family, those idiots could have got to him and got to his wife, and could have been a lot worse. So fair play to the ones that were standing up for him. But yeah, really, really poor from Mourinho. But you've come to expect it, because he's not a very likable chap, is he? He's, to say the least. So idiot. But let's hope they do something. But I wouldn't hold my breath.
Paul, anything to add to what the guys have said?
Not really. I agree, Charlie. What Nick and Joe said there. If you want referees to come through, then you've got to be backed and supported. And yeah, Mourinho's just a sourpuss, isn't he? He's just a very, very bad loser who tries to cover his own deficiencies by blaming the referee for not giving the decisions that he wanted during the course of the game. And at some stage, and we're going to have to maybe look at examples of other sports like rugby union, rugby league, where the officials are challenged in the way they are routinely by managers, etc. And it's not just me. You look at Klopp's antics, you look at Guardiola's antics. The game is scared to tackle managers, and it's just devolved too much power to them. And they need to start backing the officials rather than the managers.
Lauren, do you think this is the worst example of a manager going overboard? I think it is. Do you?
Yeah, probably. I mean, I'm sure worse happens in the tunnels that we don't see, but it's the fact that it was caught on camera, and like you said, it's going to spread like wildfire, and it's the implications that it will have, saying to fans that, it's okay to speak to the refs like this, because it's not, because, none of us are happy with a lot of, with VAR, with refs this season, but at the end of the day, they're in a very high pressure job, and we have to have a bit of understanding that they are human and that mistakes can happen, but they need to be protected and they deserve to be respected for the job they do, for sure.
Right, Podders, let's just give you this, because this is entertaining in the extreme. Frank Lampard said Arsenal's revival is down to massive investment. Arsenal last 2 years spending 265 million. Chelsea last 6 months, 650 million. Just thought I'd make that point. And finally, before we say goodbye, thank you so much for your time this evening, because it's been a big one. It's been a 2-hour job. A man was arrested at the FA Cup final at Wembley for wearing a Manchester United shirt which had the reference on 97 is not enough, obviously referring to the Hillsborough disaster. It so annoyed me how people could actually be his friends, how people could encourage him, how he was let into the game. I mean, it doesn't, we're all keen on our own team, but that, I mean, on the back of this Mourinho thing, it was just an absolute disgrace, Nick.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, it was, I saw that as well, and took me
Did you
a
fall
second
asleep?
to
I
really...
thought it was me. I thought it was me. I got cut off. I thought, oh,
No,
I'll have
you're
to wind
good.
it up a bit.
Yeah, I agree with you. How can you be friends with somebody like that? Like, who didn't think to say something, or I feel like take care of him before he even gets in? Like, surely somebody saw that outside the ground and thought, hey, we need to do something about this. Glad to see something finally happened, and he didn't get away with that. But
well, myself and Paul are old enough, only to remember it, and it was myself and Jay have done the 89 version of the lead up to that, and it was such a horrific thing to witness. I mean, you didn't really know what was going on. You were seeing it on your telly, and then on the papers the following day. I've got this picture in my head, and I cannot unsee it. And it was a dreadful thing. Obviously, the cages were in there, and it's a memory of people that went. Some of them young people as well, went to a football match and never came home after it. And for someone to actually put that on a shirt, banning's not good enough for me. You have to be arrested and given, I don't know, some sort of sentence, because you can't encourage this sort of behaviour. This that undermines lots of emotions, family feelings. It's still raw for a lot of people. What do you think, Jay?
I mean, it's who even thinks to do that? Who even thinks like that? Ultimately, I I'm surprised somebody didn't like hit him. To be perfectly honest, I'm surprised somebody didn't confront him, and because I'm fairly I'm confident enough to say that United fans would have been disgusted with that. City fans would have been disgusted. I'm surprised somebody didn't go for him. It was good that the police got him, but I was slightly disappointed that somebody didn't get hold of him and probably do something, because that, I mean,
I would have ripped the shirt off his back.
Well, most people would have, but some people would have done a lot worse. So, look, the guy's an absolute moron. Really not. I mean, come on, man. We're talking about something that people died, and it just not right. So, idiot, absolutely. He deserves every punishment that's coming his way.
Podders, thanks ever so much for keeping us afloat and joining us on a weekly basis, and we look forward to your return in the new year. Hopefully you look forward to ours. I've got to thank the guys. Jay, thanks ever so much for your contributions throughout the season, and he was with me from the beginning, or about 7 episodes in. Paul is always solid, always objective, been brilliant this season. Lauren, thank you so much for joining us, because the WSL insight and the men's game has been superb. And Nick, it's always a pleasure to have you. And well, you're gonna, I can see the deterioration as you, over the months of next season, you're going to be coming on going, hold on, I'll just have a little nap while they're chatting. But it's been brilliant to have you all. Thanks very much for joining me for this long one. And Podders, have a great rest in between. Watch the transfer window, and we will see you next season, no doubt at all. Take care.
Bye-bye.